have gone to bed, I would have turned off my telephone, I'd be hard to get hold of, because I wouldn't want to commit myself one way or the other until I smelt the air in the morning. And that may well be the game that's going on. It becomes much easier for each person to resign. There now having been 3 resignations. To be the first resignation takes a great deal of courage. But once the chips are beginning to tumble, then each successive resignation takes much less courage. So I think the question really is, will David Miliband in the end commit himself to the Prime Minister? If Alistair Darling's not going to move, is he happy to support the Prime Minister? Will there be any other resignations?
Well, I mean, David Miliband has so far said it. I mean, he's a friend of James Purnell, and he has said it was the wrong move. Liam Byrne, we've had as well, Jack Straw, Sean Woodward speaking very strongly in favour of the Prime Minister, David Blunkett as well, outside the Cabinet, of course. I mean, what's your interpretation of this? Do you feel that that James Purnell is therefore pretty well going to be on his own tonight in terms of the Cabinet publicly?
I think it's too early to tell. It does look as if James Purnell's resignation is not coordinated with other resignations, but it doesn't mean, I think, that the Prime Minister is home and dry. And what ministers are saying in statements released to the media may not be exactly the same as what's happening behind the scenes. There's a kind of middle ground in all of this as well, which is that the Prime Minister goes on with Alistair Darling as Chancellor, having pretty well announced that he wanted to get rid of the Chancellor of the Exchequer. So the Chancellor then looks weak, the Prime Minister then looks weak, and then the government has to endure 2 sets of election results, those emerging on Friday of the local elections and those emerging on Sunday of the European elections. So I think there are still several iterations of this to be played out.
Does it, I mean, this might sound like a strange question, but does it matter if he's seen as weak at the moment? Is he not to a degree protected by the fact that he was not elected, and that if there was to be a new leader who was also not elected, it would be unsustainable? You would have to have an election, and Labour know they would lose that, and therefore Gordon Brown can go on and hope the economy turns round and still have a chance.
Yeah, but James Purnell's point is that even if the Labour Party elects a new leader in a chaotic situation, that new leader will do less badly in the election than Gordon Brown would have done. And the calculation for Labour backbenchers is, am I going to lose my seat or not? And I mean, let's be arbitrary about this. If the feeling is that Gordon Brown would lose by 100 seats, but that Alan Johnson would lose by 20 seats, then that's a large number of MPs who would be in the next Parliament. That's what the MPs worry about. But at the moment, I think this isn't out there amongst the Parliamentary Labour Party. This is only out there amongst a small group in the Cabinet. The Cabinet have the destiny of the government entirely in their hands. And if they wish to, they can, by tomorrow afternoon, remove the Prime Minister and precipitate all of this. And I think most of them will be thinking about it pretty hard overnight and probably telephoning each other like fury.
What does the modern Conservative Party make of this? I mean, is there not an element of wanting Gordon Brown to stay on because they see that as ultimately an electoral advantage for the Conservatives?
As far as I know, Conservatives would see it as an electoral advantage to keep Gordon Brown, and that again is James Purnell's point, is it not? But at the moment, all the scenarios look absolutely chaotic. I mean, with the collapse in the Cabinet, whoever became leader next would have to deal with a chaotic situation and probably a very highly split Labour Party. So right now the Conservatives are laughing on both sides of their face. If Brown stays, that's great. If there's chaos, that's great.
What do you make of the whole thing? I mean, have you seen much like this before? Well, you've certainly seen 1 or 2 interesting episodes, but how do you rank this last couple of days?
I rank it up there with the most severe political crises of all time. I mean, the Margaret Thatcher case, of course, is one that comes to mind, but the Margaret Thatcher case was precipitated by an election within the Conservative Party because we had a constitution that allowed there to be leadership challenges. And then the Cabinet, seeing the results of the election, made their move. In this case, we've seen a spontaneous fragmenting of the Cabinet, and that is really very unusual. And what we don't know at the moment of speaking is whether we've seen a partial fragmentation and okay, it stops there, or whether what we've seen is simply, you know, as it were, the first boulders falling off what actually is going to become a kind of landslip.
Michael Portillo, thank you very much indeed for that.
Thank you.
Just back in the studio, gentlemen. I mean, Fred, what do you make of Michael Portillo?
Well, fascinated to hear from someone who's been there and sort of
brought the t-shirt.
Yeah, brought the, you know, and it does bring back those memories when you said about, you know, the cabinet is then finally sort of where it happens. I think I mean, it was struck also that when we were talking earlier on about, you know, this thing.